Have you ever questioned how the East is depicted in Western narratives? This question opens the door to a concept known as Orientalism. But what is Orientalism really? In essence, it is the Western perspective of Eastern societies and cultures. But it's not as simple as that. Orientalism has deep historical roots. It stretches back centuries, permeating literature, art, and academia, shaping our perceptions of the East. It's not just an innocent fascination with the exotic East, but rather a complex and intricate construction by the West. And crucially, it has political implications. Orientalism has often been used to justify colonial and imperialistic endeavors. It's a narrative that has been woven into the fabric of Western consciousness, influencing our views and interactions with Eastern cultures. But this perspective has been challenged. Let's delve deeper into the thoughts of one scholar who challenged this perspective. Edward Said, a name synonymous with the critique of Orientalism, was not born a scholar. He was born in the heart of the East Jerusalem in 1935. His early years were spent absorbing the diverse cultures and perspectives of the Middle East, but his world expanded when he moved to Cairo, Egypt, for education. At Victoria College, he began to understand the complexities of the East-West relationship, laying the groundwork for his later work. Said's journey then took him across the Atlantic to the United States. Here, at Princeton University, and later at Harvard, he delved deeper into the Western perspectives of the East. These experiences, from the bustling streets of Jerusalem to the Ivy League's hallowed halls, shaped Said's understanding of Orientalism. He began to question, to critique, and ultimately to redefine the West's understanding of the East. Now, let's explore the journey that led him to challenge the prevailing views of the East. In 1978, Said published his seminal work, Orientalism, a book that shook the foundations of academia. This was the moment when Edward Said took center stage in the academic world, challenging the way the West viewed and represented the East. Said's Orientalism was a sweeping critique of the West's portrayal of the East as a land of exotic mystery, backwardness, and inferiority. He argued that this was not just a benign cultural exchange, but a manifestation of power and domination. Said peeled back the layers of the Orientalist discourse, revealing its deeply entrenched biases and prejudices. He argued that the West's depiction of the East wasn't based on an understanding of its cultures and societies. Instead, it was a reflection of the West's own fears and fantasies. This portrayal served to justify the West's colonial and imperialist ambitions, reinforcing the idea that the East needed to be civilized or saved by the West. Said showed that Orientalism was not a neutral, objective field of study. It was instead a product of the West's political dominance and cultural imperialism. The West, according to Said, used Orientalism to control and dominate the East, painting it as the other, different, exotic, and inferior. This depiction of the East, Said argued, was deeply flawed and problematic. It ignored the rich diversity and complexity of Eastern cultures, reducing them to a series of stereotypes and cliches. It also served to dehumanize Eastern people, portraying them as passive, irrational, and uncivilized. Said's Orientalism challenged the academic world to question its own biases and assumptions. It urged scholars to approach Eastern cultures with an open mind, recognizing their distinct histories, traditions, and values. It called for a shift from a Eurocentric perspective to a more inclusive global perspective. But was Orientalism merely an academic critique? No, it was much more. It was a call to action, a plea for understanding and respect. It was a challenge to the West to see the East not as the other, but as an equal partner in the global community. Said's Orientalism was not just a critique of academic discourse, it was a critique of power. This statement sets the stage for the profound understanding of how Edward Said perceived Orientalism, not merely as a scholarly concept, but as a mechanism of Western dominance over the East. Said's argument was firmly grounded in the belief that the West's portrayal of the East was not an innocent, objective endeavor. Instead, it was a calculated strategy, a systematic process of othering that painted the East as exotic, backward, and in desperate need of Western intervention. This was not merely an academic exercise, it was a form of power, a tool used to justify the West's political and economic control over the East. Imagine a narrative woven so convincingly that it seems to be the only truth. This was the essence of Orientalism. It was the West's story about the East, a story that served the storyteller, enabling the West to perpetuate its dominance. And it was this narrative, Said argued, that allowed the West to exercise its power, to interfere politically, economically, and culturally in the East, all under the guise of a seemingly benevolent mission to civilize. But Said's critique did not stop at unveiling this mechanism of power. It went a step further. It inspired a new branch of study, post-colonial studies, which aimed to challenge and dismantle the Western-centric worldview. Said's work became a torchbearer for scholars who sought to question and critique the established narratives, to uncover the voices that had been silenced, and to redefine the East from its own perspective, not as an exotic other, but as a complex, diverse, and vibrant reality. In this way, Said's Orientalism was more than a critique. It was a call to action, a call to challenge the narratives that have been imposed upon us, to question the power structures that underpin our understanding of the world. Said's critique of Orientalism continues to reverberate in academic circles and beyond. His work remains a powerful reminder of the link between knowledge and power and the role that narratives play in shaping our world. So, what can we take away from Said's critique of Orientalism? In our journey today, we've unmasked the construct of Orientalism, tracing its roots back to the historical interactions between the East and the West. We delved into the life of Edward Said, understanding how his unique experiences shaped his groundbreaking work. We unveiled Orientalism as a concept, a way of seeing that imagines, emphasizes, exaggerates, and distorts differences of Arab and Asian people compared to Europeans. It's not just a passive observation, but an active construct that shapes how we perceive and interact with these cultures. We also touched upon the power dynamics inherent in Orientalism. Said's critique challenges us to recognize that cultural representations are not innocent or neutral, but rather are fraught with imbalances of power and knowledge. In the words of Edward Said, each one of us is a product of history, but we can also be agents of history. Let us be critical of the narratives we consume and the histories we create. Do like, share, and subscribe our channel for more content.